We're back to do more on money with Sonny. It is annual planning season. A lot of people are building their annual plans. A lot of people are struggling to build those plans. And I'm going with the blue shade. And I think that a lot of people overcomplicate it. It seems scary. It's easy to overdo. It's easy to overthink. You're getting into pro formas. You can get it too detailed. What do you say, Sonny? We come up with a couple of points of success criteria for what we need to have. Let's see. I'm going to present. Oh, come on.
I agree. I think people overthink it, and I think overcomplicate the process by overthinking the end result rather than the steps to get to that end result. So
I'm going to use my stack wins format, and this is annual financial plan. All right. So this is our little stack wins framework we use for outlining processes and playbooks. What goes into a good financial plan? Let's start there.
I think the first thing is understanding the driver to get to the results. And people, a lot of times we spin trying to come up with what should our revenue goal be rather than just following the process on how we got to that number this year. How many leads did we have? What was the conversion rate? How long did it take to close? Velocity. And you understand those metrics and build off of that rather than overthinking from exaggerate. But a lot of times it's, we have a 5 billion TAM and we need to capture X% of that TAM, which can seem a little overwhelming because you're going to come up with a big number and say, oh, this is way too large. TAM or even growth.
I like it. Okay. I'd say it gives, is there some aspect or some way to put this? Let's say I'm a sales organization or a engineering organization, and I'm going to hit these aggressive targets moving ahead. Do I need to make sure I have a head count to support that or whatever other tools?
Definitely. You do need to, but I think it's coming up with the number. So from let's use sales is always a good example, right? Because everyone always wants more salespeople because salespeople equals revenue. But that's not necessarily the case, right? I think if you build your number, let's take an example of your marketing engine is generating, say, 50 leads a month, and those leads are converting at 50% just for simplicity's sake. And you have 25 ops, which then probably close at somewhere between 20 and 30%. Let's focus on those numbers and incrementally move those numbers. How can we move those numbers rather than the end result, which is, okay, how do I get from $100,000 to $125,000 in revenue? Because it's a lot more daunting. But if you start by saying, okay, if I got 50 leads and I want to get to 60 leads a month, and I want to incrementally increase my conversion rate by 5%. Once you do that math, you're going to come up with the number of opportunities and potential deals you have. And then you will know your existing team can handle that volume or not, right? So that conversation about resources naturally falls out of the end result rather than a top-down approach, which typically leads to under or overstaffing, depending on, your business specific.
Got it. Anything else you look for? We don't have to fill up all these, but just like other things that when you think, hey, this is a good financial plan, what are some of the other factors you ever think about? I don't know, high, optimistic, pessimistic, and medium kind of things. And I'm not pushing you there. I'm just curious.
So I've been in organizations which we've had multiple levels of plans. I personally am not a fan of them. I think having one goal for an organization and everyone moving towards the same goal allows you to all speak the same language and have a common purpose, versus if you have your exec team that has their goal and their bonus differently versus your engineering org, or back office team, which has a different goal. And then sales teams are the one exception. Sales teams always have a different goal. Quota is quota, and that's universal across organizations. But outside of that, I think it's have a common goal. But even your sales team should understand what the business goal is, and their pay structure should align that they are compensated fairly for getting to whatever the organizational goals are. So obviously, quota is typically set higher, and that is what it is because not everyone's going to get to 100%. And I think the other thing I'll say, really document your assumptions, because budgets, we focus on growth rates and revenue targets and EBITDA targets, where you can only really measure the accuracy of your assumptions, right? Like your budget's going to be wrong the minute it's set. But what the quality of the assumptions and being able to measure the variance to those assumptions is what you can actually affect, right? And
That is
I
a
think
great call out, man. It's a great call out because you've also got to, my belief is every quarter, you've got to check back in on those assumptions. Are they still valid?
yeah,
Because you don't know what's going to happen in 12 months. And I know a lot of people have to report to boards, but I think that it's much better to bring up difficult news early than it is to go back and say, hey guys, it really hasn't been going well, but we've been telling you we were going to hit it and then we didn't hit it, versus, hey, the market changed. We may need to rethink our plan for the year.
100%. I think a common example, and we both lived this, right? Like you build, so using an OKR example, right? Having a key result of $500,000 of revenue this quarter, whether you hit it or not, doesn't really matter because you could have done all the right things. And like you said, it could have been a market issue, or you could have done all the wrong things and landed a bluebird and just blown that number out of the water. And it's okay. Like going back to my example, is the marketing needs to generate an X amount of leads, sales needs to have a certain conversion rate, right? A certain velocity. Like measuring those things will actually help you move the business forward versus just focusing on the end result. The end result's important, and then that's always the goal, but the process to get there, I think, is more important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm just going to put this in our issue section because it's an issue that comes up with annual planning. You've got to have something, you've got to have something that addresses that. Like we will double check our beliefs and track them on a quarterly basis with what we do with our customers at ResultMaps and have that conversation. But if you don't document the assumptions, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter which format you're using, SMART goals, raw, key results. I think if you're not defining what the actual actions are impacting and you're only measuring the end result, you don't know what you did to get there necessarily.
100%. So when you go through the process, can you think of what are the top 3 things you always do to make sure whatever comes out of your outbox into the next person's inbox is a solid plan? Or maybe it won't be an email, but whatever form it takes.
Yeah, I think being at different levels is different things, right? So at my level now, it is the top-down approach, right? This was our starting with a 3-year plan goal, right? These are the objectives we want to set. Are we meeting those objectives? And then diving into how did the teams build to those targets and getting back into, okay, is it assumption-based or is it what you see typically from a sales or revenue forecast is, oh, I had 3 sales reps this year. They achieved X. Next year, I'm going to add a 4th to get to Y. And making those types of things are what I'm looking for, is making sure that there's more thought than just that.
Got you. 4. Okay. So I'll say 4.
It goes back to what we were just making sure that there's a solid set of assumptions and logic to building those assumptions.
Got it. And then I know when we've done work together, it's usually about this time of year, even earlier, like August, if I recall correctly. Like in August, you're giving heads up.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to start this process soon. And then right away, there's a timeline for it.
And timelines are important. Documenting and starting early is important. I think you want the best and the latest data. And when we're talking, we were on a calendar year end, right? Obviously, if you wait until December to do it, you're going to have 11 months worth of data. And that's going to,
But you could review.
That's exactly where I was going. It's like I'm saying, like we were talking about before, you're building a model based on assumptions. Like you can tweak those assumptions and update them and keep them live as more information becomes available. But taking the time to actually think through, where is the business? How is the business doing currently? Where do we want it to go? And then getting in. And when we're talking about a strategy, right? It's okay. You look at your 3 to 5 year plan. Do we need to refresh or update that plan? First of all, are we tracking to that plan? Has anything changed? Do we need to update that plan? And once you lock that long range view, then you can start working on your short term next year fiscal budget.
I'm going to keep it at 3-year plans because that's what we always recommend to our clients. It's close enough to motivate, but far enough out that we don't freak out. But when you get to 5, I think people will that sounds like forever from now. For 3 years, we better get off our duff. I got that from Cameron Harrell. It's a really good story about that. These are good checklist items. So we've looked at 100-person teams. I talk with a lot of companies that are 20 to 75 as well. I'd say first, put that aside, how early do you like people to start doing their financial planning for the coming year?
And you just mentioned it, 4 months, I think, is from a finance and leadership team perspective. I think the 4-month mark is where you should start. You should, coming into Q4, you should have your timeline defined. You should have the process ready to roll out to your leadership team or the folks that are going to help you support it. Because the other important thing is, don't do this in a vacuum. As leaders, we think we know everything that's going on in a business. There's typically nuances we may not be aware of. And the more people you involve in the process, the wider, the easier the buy-in is going to be, and the more support you're going to have for the plan.
Totally agree. Yeah, and you'd think that's obvious, but I think what I've seen happen in particular when there's junior leaders is you're so wrapped up in just trying to come up with a model that you feel okay about. That absorbs all your time and energy, and it doesn't really you don't bring in other people. And that's one reason why starting early really helps, because then you can go to your team and get their help vetting that model or contributing ideas you haven't thought of. The team is always powerful. And even if you're using ChatGPT, you have to remember everybody's going to get the same answers out of the ChatGPT, the Claudes, the Groks. And just like anything else, garbage in, garbage-ish out. You've got to be able to give it enough context that it can give you back something meaningful and creative, but gathering that information from your team really helps that.
And I think one of the concerns everyone has, and we've seen it too, right? I think both of us have seen it, is you typically get something really conservative back from lower levels. But that's a good thing, because as long as you're aligned on the drivers and the inputs, you can then have discussions about the inputs. And I think a lot of times everyone gets worried about the output, right? Which is, okay, I need it to be $2 million, but build-up says 1.5. Well, which is great. At least you got 1.5 of the $2 million target that you wanted to be at, right? Now, go back and start. You can have discussions with your team. The more time you have, the more fruitful and wholesome those discussions will be about the inputs and the drivers and what you need to do to move those.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing for leaders to do, because you're trying to get the maximum as a leader from what the team's doing and the resources you have, and yet still making time in your one-on-ones. And if you're using ResultMaps, you're running a one-on-one with your team members. Great thing to have on your issues list in your one-on-one. Hey, I want to talk through this. Please review this. What do you think, etc. One other thing I'd say that comes up now, we're in a time where you absolutely have to acknowledge that pretty much everything that comes up is going to run through one of the large language models, one of the frontier models. My to-do is always create solid context for any application of an LLM. So if you don't know LLMs, I know you do, Sonny, but for any listeners, that's ChatGPT, Claude, Grok. You have to be able to create context and compartmentalize things for them in order to get back meaningful information. If you just go, give me an annual plan, you're going to get back stuff that might sound good to you at first read, but when you go to try to implement it, no leader, you never want to be going, ChatGPT said. I think it's a pretty good little plan there. Anything else you would add?
No, I think this is how I would think about it, and focus less on the PowerPoint and more on the inputs to your spreadsheet.
Focus on the inputs. I'm going to add this. So meaning the data Data quality, source. It's good. This is another Sonny on the money thing. 30, we didn't even take 30 minutes here.
20 minutes.
And I think we have a good plan. So what I think we'll do is we'll package this up, make it available for people. If they want to sign up, we'll provide a link. If we want to add more or riff more, we'll do it.
Yeah, or give it some more thought. Good.
Good stuff, man. Thanks, Sonny.
Appreciate it, Scott.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode. Be sure to hit the like button below and click the subscribe button to be notified when new videos drop. Oh, and try the Company Vision AI Builder